Okay, we're going to get started. I'd like to introduce Tasha from the Brighton office. She's going to be walking you through this today, and I'm going to turn this over to Tasha to talk a little bit about herself, her team, and her role, and about Scolaris. Go ahead, Tasha.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can all hear me as well as you could hear Alex. So my name is Tasha Mellins-Cohen. At Semantico, my role was Director of Product Development, which covered, obviously, products such as Scolaris and Sam Sigma, but also, and more directly connected to client engagement, we have business analysts and user experience professionals in this team, and we help clients to develop their products in order to deliver on their strategic goals. You will see my team referred to as strategic engagement, and we'll be talking you through more about what we can do on that front at various other points over the next few weeks. The focus today is on Scolaris, which, as you will see from my screen, which I very much hope you can see, is the integrated content platform. As a little bit of background, Scolaris has been around for well over a decade now. It's historically been built very much as a custom implementation, a standalone client implementation. So every time a client came to us, we would, and we still do, spend a lot of time looking at their specific needs and their specific data in order to deliver an optimal site. Something that you might see on the second line of this is that we are designed to flex and manage any different type of content. I am going to be showing you what that means slightly later in this presentation. In terms of scale, we have in the past supported CAB abstracts. They've very recently moved over to their own site. That was well over 10 million individual abstracts as part of a database. We have archival content elements. For example, the Brill Primary Sources online site has, as you might guess from the name, primary sources. So these are scanned copies of physical documents, for example, Dutch naval records that include metadata and are searchable. We've got several 100,000 books and a relatively small number of journal articles by comparison with the rest of HighWire's products on JCore and Classic. But we do still have journal articles. So with no further ado, I'm going to jump into demonstrations because they are far more interesting. Hopefully, the gods of the live demo will smile on me. I'm not guaranteeing it. So if anybody can't see anything, speak up and let Alex know. So this is the Access Engineering Library. It is a site that we built for McGraw-Hill Education, and it is one of their flagship sites. So the reason that I'm showing you Access Engineering is the variety of content on this site. It's primarily a books platform, but we also have a huge amount of tools and other media. So, as an example, you can click through to tutorials. There's only a few of these on here, but we are rebuilding, or currently about to start rebuilding Access Engineering to accommodate a planned increase in the number of tutorials available. So this is, as an example, calculations with the Manning equation using Excel spreadsheets. I have literally no idea what that means, just for reference. This site can be navigated by subject or by industry. So this is a different take on taxonomic enrichment. We wouldn't normally see industries. And of course, curriculum maps. So what's been done here is that subject matter experts from McGraw-Hill have taken all of the content available in Access Engineering. In this particular case, they've looked at Duran's Quality Handbook, Six Sigma Handbook, and Statistical Process Control, and mapped that information to standard courses provided by graduate and postgraduate engineering professors, and they have mapped tables and sources to the various different components of those courses. So this is a very helpful educational tool. The other thing that's really very cool about Access Engineering is DataViz. Now, DataViz is fairly new. It was only launched in the middle of last year, and as you might have guessed from the name, it is a data visualization tool. This is very new. It uses a new piece of kit for us called D3. But again, it's an educational tool which is going to require me to sign in. So let's see if I can remember the details. Okay. So this is allowing me to explore the world of aerospace engineering, for example, in this particular example. I can explore the world of aerospace engineering and aerospace materials, and I can say, for example, well, for aerospace materials, I want something that's quite light, and I can literally explore what is available in these materials. So I'm only going to look at these materials from now on. I can click through, I can see more details about aluminium, and this is something that we're seeing working engineers make use of for very quick lookups, but it's also something that lecturers are using to allow student engineers to explore the world of materials engineering. There is a very good video on YouTube which explains the whys and wherefores of DataViz. I'm not going to belabor the point right now. Jumping into something a bit closer to home, we have the Drama Online library. Now, this was built about 3 or 4 years ago for Bloomsbury, who wanted to provide a way for students and practitioners to really get to grips with plays primarily. So this particular site has a completely custom DTD that doesn't resemble anything you're going to see anywhere else. And we've done an awful lot of work with that DTD to allow it to be searched to allow the content to be searched in quite specific ways. So if I have a look at the advanced search here, obviously we've got some Boolean information, but I could search for monologues, I could search for all kinds of other bits and pieces, by the gender of the character, by how long the monologue is. I can look based on playwrights, by genre, period, theme, and setting. So let's have a look for Aeschylus monologues, and you'll see I've got rather a lot of them here. I can click through and see more information about the play. I can read the full script of the play if I've got a subscription to it, which for this particular one I haven't. And the details of the book in which this particular transcript can be found, as well, obviously, as a bylink. We also built what we've called play tools. So these are character grids which allow particularly directors, what we've seen, to determine whether one actor can play multiple parts. It's broken down by act, by scene, and you can see by the size of the dot here, so this is some very simple data visualization, how large a part any given character has in any given role. So you probably, as an example, would not want the same person playing Grumio and Peter, because they're both very heavily used in Act 4. So this is just a nice little piece of information that we've been able to gather from the data that's in the plays themselves. Beyond the plays, we have the concept of context and criticism. So these are value-added texts associated with either a specific playwright or a specific play. And we've also got Theatrecraft, which is similarly educational material. This is something that Bloomsbury are working on expanding quite heavily at the moment. Something to be aware of with Drama Online is that we've done an awful lot of work with multimedia on here. So you get a lot more rich information around video, audio, and so forth. And then really, truly close to home, we have EDM Case Reports. Now, this is something that's been built for Bioscientifica, who are a HighWire client. It's a fully open access database of case reports, unsurprisingly, on the topics of endocrinology, diabetes, and metabolism. And the reason that it was built by Semantico was because of the taxonomic requirements that Bioscientifica had for this database. If you go to cases, you'll see this as a fairly extensive series of taxonomies. So the publication details, obviously, this is not a taxonomic piece of information, this is just metadata. But within the taxonomies, you've got patient demographics, clinical overview, diagnosis and treatment, and related disciplines as separate subtaxonomies, all provided by Bioscientifica. If I take clinical overview and I take the pituitary term, you'll see I've got 64 results here within this search results list, and I can slice and dice this by everything in the other taxonomies as well. So I can slice this and say, I'm only interested in seeing case reports about geriatric pituitary issues, and I can get down quite quickly to very, very small numbers of search results. If I actually click through to a particular search, a particular article, you can see all of the different taxonomic terms with which this particular article is related, and you can use any one of these to trigger a new search. So there is an awful lot of flexibility. If we jump in here, there's an awful lot of flexibility in the way that you navigate this website. Something to be aware of, there is no PDF download associated with these articles. We have pure HTML display on here. Everything is associated with a DOI, which we deposit for the customer. You've got tables, you've got images in line, exactly as you would expect to see with any other journal type article. And obviously the references are linked. So this is pretty much a standard journal article as far as we are concerned. It just happens to have an awful lot of enrichment associated with it. One nice thing that we've done on EDM Case Reports is implemented this search history piece, where if a user has actively searched for a term rather than just navigating through the taxonomy, that search is remembered through your session. So if I perform a search for diabetes, it's going to return lots of results, but you'll see if I then navigate off of this page, my search history will start to be populated. Oh, it's not working. I'm going to report a bug to the team. Excuse me while I scribble that down. EDM search. This is the penalty of the live demo. So very quickly, last bit of visualization before I get back into the presentation. We, many years ago, built the Blill Online reference works, primary sources, and bibliographies. We would very, very much like to redesign these, but we can't do it until after Blill have finished their big journal and book migration. The reason that I am showing you this particular site is because you will see as you navigate through this, which is the Blill Online reference works. We support multilingual sites by default. So this site includes German, or this particular book includes German as well as English, and it's not something that requires inordinate amounts of additional work. So to be aware of, through these 4 different sites, I have shown you support for 4 different file types using 4 different DTDs. So for Access Engineering Library, we get content in docbooks. For Drama Online, as I said, there's a bespoke schema, a bespoke DTD. EDM Case Reports is in NLM, and Blill Online reference works primarily come to us in TEI. So we've got a pretty wide scope for the types of content that we can accommodate. If we think about the work that's happening at the moment for the clients who are coming on board with Scolaris over the course of this year, we're encouraging them to use BIT 2.0 wherever possible, just because it makes it easier for us. But we also have customers who are using custom DTDs or variants of standard DTDs. So I'm just going to jump back to my PowerPoint slide. So the sites that I have shown you are older sites. These are Scolaris I. We are currently in the process of building Scolaris II, and we're using the Cochrane library, which I'm hoping most of you will recognize as the premium service that it is. We're using the Cochrane library as our donor project for Scolaris II. As a little bit of background, we have been working with Wiley for quite some time. Initially, we built the Royal Marsden Manual, the 8th edition. We then built the 9th edition of RMM Online. This particular site has some very complex navigation and search requirements, and again, I can show that to you if you are interested. But it also has some very complex annotation requirements. We followed RMM 9 up with the Rooks textbook of dermatology. I would not recommend going to look at this site after you had a meal. It is inclusive of some fairly revolting imagery, and I'm saying that as somebody who used to work in a mortuary. And after all of our successes with these complex major reference works, when Wiley were faced with a requirement for rebuilding the Cochrane library, they trusted us enough to give us the work for that. Now, the reason that the Cochrane library is not a standard journal site, as it were, is because while it does include the Cochrane reviews, which are systematic reviews, fairly standard journal article type content, the Cochrane library also includes a very large database of abstracts called Central, and various other pieces of content such as the Cochrane Clinical Answers. So we're not looking at a single content type here. Remember the integrated content concept? This is going back to that. So over the course of last year, we started by looking at validating XML, building some unskinned rendering, starting to skin it, starting to add in some more complicated features and functionality, such as a standalone figure viewer, some interesting search, and again, more on the figure viewers. And when I say interesting search, for the Cochrane library, we're having to support several hundred lines of mix and match search. So very, very complicated and difficult to match up. So given all of the work that we needed to do with the Cochrane library, we were very keen to make use of that project, as I said, as a donor for Scolaris II. And following selection of the new content management system, which was early in the year, in May last year, the product team and I kicked off with problem analysis and domain design. So we started looking at, beyond Cochrane, what does Scolaris II need to do? This mostly entailed going back to our existing clients and looking at what we had done for them. But we also spent a lot of time looking at what had come through as requirements from RFPs and simply conversations that we've been having with existing and potential clients at conferences and other locations. We broke that down in quite a lot of detail into themes, headlines, and epics, and I will pop that up for you in a minute. So a theme, for example, might be search or browse. Headlines would be browse by topic. And then the epic would include the details of what exactly browse by topic means for Scolaris. We then moved from there into a gap analysis, so mapping the requirements that had been defined in Q3 into existing features across the board with old Scolaris sites, Scolaris I sites, looking at where Cochrane could already deliver on those requirements, looking at where what we built for Cochrane was a configuration setting, so completely reusable, dependent on data, and where there was an actual gap where we had to define missing pieces of the puzzle. And the reason that we had to do that is because in 2017, we have 3 clients already signed up to be migrated onto this Scolaris II platform. Access Engineering, which you've already seen, was originally built in 2012. It had a bit of a facelift in 2014, and the product has done very well in the marketplace to the point that McGraw-Hill now want to re-platform it to take advantage of new technologies that are available. So we're working with them to do that at the moment. AORN, you might be familiar with as an existing HighWire client. They came to us because they wanted to go beyond hosting just their book and start integrating lots of associated and loosely associated content. And Springer Publishing, which is not Springer Nature, it's Springer Publishing in New York. They have an awful lot of books and journals that they want to integrate into a single platform. So over the last few months, my team and I have been working with all 3 of these clients to get down into the real details of exactly what they want and what it needs to look like. So I can show you, and this really is hoping that the gods of the live demo will play nicely. Design. So, see? There we go. So this is what we have designed for the Periops 360, which is what AORN are currently calling their new site. It's inclusive of the guidelines, which are currently hosted by HighWire. But it also wraps in all of their tools, so audit tools, case studies, all of these things down here. Their at-a-glance guidelines, so I can show you these. So you've got embedded video and the ability to download this as a poster size PDF. You've got their frequently asked questions, which we haven't populated in this wireframe, and you've also got the ability, they've got the ability to upload their books, so their non-major reference works, their monographs. all into one place. So this is proof of the pudding, proof of the concept that we really do have integrated content capabilities. So I have done very, very well on the timing. Would anybody like to A, ask a question, or B, see other sites?
Please go ahead and type in your answers to that, and I'll read them out for the recording. I see one question. Should we go ahead with that?
Go for it.
Okay, so this is regarding capacity and performance. Has there been any performance tests or profiling done to determine upper limits, or is this just based on our biggest set of customer data so far?
So obviously for Scolaris I, it's scaled per site because they're all standalone implementations. For the Cochrane project, we are actually in the middle of doing a round of performance testing at the moment, and we specified required scaling quite a way back to make sure that we would be able to accommodate within the architecture the scale that we were anticipating for Scolaris II. I have to say, I don't know off the top of my head what the results of that performance testing were.
Okay. There's a series of operational questions. First is, how does content come into Scolaris?
In many different ways. So there are a number of different options. Typically, we ask publishers to put their content into what is known as the loader. The loader covers a multitude of sins. For Scolaris I, again, it's a standalone thing for each customer. What we do is take the content that they deposit either in WebDAV or an FTP site. We validate it against the schema that we have defined for this particular customer. So we're not forcing customers to use just JAPs or whatever. It then gets loaded, indexed for search, and made available on staging prior to being published when the publisher is ready to put it out. Obviously, they can skip staging if they need to. I don't know if that answers that question.
And then what downstream capabilities does Semantico have? And by that we mean deposits at, say, Crossref or PubMed.
So this is something that actually only came up fairly recently. Prior to EDM, we didn't really have any customers who cared about Crossref or PubMed. We have obviously got the Crossref integration, so we can deposit DOIs and repoint DOIs should we need to. We work with Crossmark and with the funder database, whatever it has been renamed recently, through Crossref, partly at the initiative of Wiley for the Cochrane database. We can deposit metadata or full text with PubMed or with any other service. That was something that we did last year in a project called Downstream Services. So basically, yes, we can.
Okay. And what common DTDs are in use?
So we have DocBook, as I said, but that is a massively flexible DTD. It's very ill-defined, and TEI is the same. We have got JAPs, we have got NLM. We also have bits 1 and upcoming is bits 2, as well as a whole raft of bespoke DTDs. For example, everything that we've done for Wiley uses the Wiley ML 3G, which is their bespoke schema.
Okay. What tools or capabilities exist for publishers to edit directly in their sites?
I'm going to ask for clarification on that one. Is this editing the web through the web content management system or editing the scholarly content?
I think editing the visible content in the site.
Okay, so in Scolaris I, we had a web content management system called Fragger. If you talk about Fragger to people here, they will start to swear. I'm giving you a heads up on that. Fragger allows customers, so if I jump into EDM Case Reports very quickly, this advertising space up at the top of the page here, this is Fragger controlled, as all the welcome from the editors-in-chief is Fragger controlled, and this advertising space is Fragger controlled. So the publisher has total control over that. Similarly, anything like this endorsements page, if it decides it's going to open, or about us, these are all completely under the control of the publisher. The way that we work with publishers is that during the design component of the work of any build, we will identify which pages or fragments of pages, and Fragger comes from fragment, need to be under the control of the publisher, and we make sure that when we build the site that is put in place. Scolaris II uses different tech for the web content management system. It's LifeRay, which allows us to have more control, or allows the publishers to have more control. So as well as the usual things that one would expect, such as WYSIWYG editor, publishers can also have different roles. So they can have somebody who is allowed to edit the website and a different person who's allowed to review and publish that content. And they can also obviously have workflows, which is required if you're going to have different people creating and then publishing content. So it's a fairly extensive level of control. What we don't offer at the moment is the ability for example, an editor to go in and directly edit what I would call the scholarly content, the primary content of the site. So I would not, as an editor, be able to go into this article by I have no idea how to pronounce that surname. Tavarwork, I'm guessing. I wouldn't be able to go in here and edit this content. I would have to go into the web dev and edit it there.
Next question, as the content is loaded, is validation automatic or manual?
One of the things that my team do is a fairly extensive piece of data analysis up front. So we use that to inform the rules that get built for data validation during ingestion. We wouldn't normally ourselves do any manual validation, but many publishers I know do use the staging process to check that, for example, the content is rendered correctly and that they've loaded the right file.
Okay. Don't see any other questions in the list. Are there other questions, or would anyone like to see demos of additional sites? Okay, here's a good one. Describe the ideal client for this platform.
So I'm going to start with their content. What we see as really ideal as a fit for Scolaris is complicated integrated content. You know, we have JCore, which is brilliant for journals. You know, there is no point a client coming to us and saying, I want Scolaris, but I only have journals. It's a waste of their time and their money. A client who comes to us, on the other hand, and says, I have journals and books and some apps and a whole load of ancillary content, and that's a good example of that is Springer Publishing. That's a pretty good bet for a Scolaris platform. Similarly, we don't set up individual sites for the individual books. If we go back to Access Engineering here, all of the books on Access Engineering are on Access Engineering. They don't have independent websites. Now, if you think about these two books that are highlighted on the side here, Perry's Chemical Engineer's Handbook and Mark's Standard Handbook for Mechanical Engineers, they are the primary reference sources for both student and working engineers. They get a hell of a lot of usage, and it could be easily argued that they should have standalone websites, but that is not something that this publisher wanted to do. McGraw-Hill wanted to make use of the fact that these are such high traffic books to drive traffic to their other content at the same time. So a publisher who wants standalone sites for their different content items is not a good Scolaris candidate. Moving away from their content, we find that publishers who want to collaborate with us do very well with Scolaris. This is quite a complicated piece of kit. It's very heavily customizable, and somebody who just wants to be able to tick a box and say, I want these 17 features and I don't care about anything else, it may well find that Scolaris is too intensive for them, that they need to put too much time and effort into it to really get the best out of it. And I think probably the last piece is really publishers who are keen to break away from templated user experience. Every site that we have here, there's similarities between the way we display content. So if you're looking at an article from one site to another, it's going to look pretty similar. But we spend a lot of time up front in discovery phases working with the content and with the publisher's requirements to really craft beautiful user experiences that are unlike anything that you're going to see on an out-of-the-box piece of kit. Having said that, we are just about to launch into a review of the templates for JCORS, so we think we can make those a lot prettier.
So what advertising services do you work with?
At the moment, we don't. However, Scolaris is designed to integrate with many, Scolaris II, let me be clear on that one, is designed to integrate with many, many different types of third-party services. So obviously it can integrate with Sam Sigma, which is our identity and access management system, but it could integrate with any other IAM as well. It can integrate with advertising solutions, with industry standard solutions like Chorus or PaperHive or Kudos or TrendMD or whatever you want. So to date, we haven't really got advertising in there, but there's nothing to stop us doing that. One interesting integration, which unfortunately I can't demonstrate it because it's on the Cochrane test server, which I don't dare touch today. We have integrated with a federated search service called Epistemonikos to allow users of the Cochrane library to search through the Epistemonikos database without leaving the Cochrane library website. So that's quite an interesting new one.
Okay. I don't know if you can demo it or you can just talk about it. Is there a way to see the back-end tools that the publisher has access to?
Not really. So every, as I said, the loaders are all independent. I'm not entirely certain I can get access to one easily today. They are very, very basic. So the Fragger tools in particular are incredibly basic. Let's see if I can If somebody comes screaming into this meeting room, it's because I'm getting into the Cochrane QA site, and I don't know if I'm allowed to today. I'm hoping that one of the guys who's listening in at this end is going to just shout at me if I'm interrupting a QA deployment. Which, from the lack of response, it looks like I might be. Okay, let's go on to the next question, and if this decides to play nicely.
Oh, okay.
So, let me make this smaller. So this for reference is the Cochrane QA site. What you're looking at here, everything that you can see here is under below the navigation is under the control of the customer. You've got all the things that you would expect to see: browse by topic, browse by Cochrane review group. I am allowed. So they've clearly changed the logins because mine is no longer recognised. I should be able to show you a very simple WYSIWYG editor that would allow me to literally change the components of this front page, but I can't remember the login. Sorry.
Another time, perhaps.
Yes,
I'll go on to the next question.
I will ask one of the guys to take some screen grabs and share them around, but I can't remember what the login is.
That would be great. Okay. So what about things like usage reporting? What kind of reporting do you give to publishers?
So obviously we have counter reports, and I'm hoping that everybody noticed yesterday that the Counter 5 draft went out for consultation. As a member of the Counter 5 working group, please review, ask your publishers to have a look at it and feedback to us. Very important. But we also have a lot of work on Google Analytics. So we work with customers to identify what they want to know from their site, and we customize the Google Analytics setup in line with that. So it will be, for example, usage reports exactly as you would expect to see around, for each article, what was the usage on an hourly, daily, weekly basis. But we also show usage of specific functionality within the site if that is something that the client wants to see. One of the things that we do offer as a service is assistance for the clients. If they're unsure how to interpret the analytics that they get back from their site, we will spend time with them, walking them through it, helping them to digest the raw analytics into useful, actionable information. And that will be rolled out. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask if you help them set up things like Google Tag Manager, or are you helping them figure out how to interpret? Okay.
So we will actually set all of that stuff up for them, but we make sure that we're doing what is going to provide value to them rather than just giving a blanket service that's the same for every client, because of the complexity of what they're sending in our direction, it doesn't always make sense to give everybody the same set of Google Analytics. So we've got a standard that we recommend, but we deviate from that wherever necessary.
Okay. There are some questions about integrating content between what we have hosted now and Scolaris, but I'm not sure that you're going to have an answer to that at this point, unless you do.
In what context? As in being able to search across all of it, or?
Yeah, searching across, alerting, interlinked references. So
it's certainly something that we're investigating and thinking about. We haven't figured out the best way to actually deliver interlink references and toll-free interjournal linking, for example. We haven't figured out the best way to do that across the different tech stacks at the moment. But it is on the list, along with many other things, admittedly, but it is on the list.
Do you use any databases in the back end to store site content?
The site content, as in the web content management components, is stored in HighWire. I think typically we would use, somebody's going to come and start shouting at me soon, but I think we would typically use Postgres for scholarly content storage. There's something in the back of my head is also saying S3.
All right. I think we're at the end of the list of questions, so if anybody did not get to ask their question, this is a good time. And I don't see any additional questions. So thank you very much, Tasha. And if anyone has questions after they've thought about this for a while, please shoot them to me, and I will get answers from Tasha.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks very much,
everybody,
everyone.
for coming in early. I actually was faster than I thought, so I appreciate even more the fact that you came in early.
All right, thanks, and we're going to end the webinar now.